right, good morning everyone. My name is Amandla Didiza, and together with Linda Zali, I'll be your MC for this morning. And of course, to everyone who is here this morning, welcome to our morning engagement on active citizenship in the SMME and NPO sector. So in the interest of today, we have a number of people in the room, and I would just like to request that each and every table, just acquaint yourselves with who's to the left and the right, opposite and in front of you. Just make those acquaintances, greet each other, warm up the space, and allow us to just move more freely as the program goes on. Understanding that it is a short program, we want to keep it as cordial and as on time as possible. So I think I'd just like to implore everyone, for the purpose of this occasion, to naturally just engage as much as possible. The space isn't just for the main speaker, the panel, anyone else, but it's a space where each and every one of us can get the opportunity to just discuss ways in which in our own individual spaces we can make a difference, we can tap into our own areas, our society, and just implore members of our society, including ourselves, to just do a little bit better in building one South Africa. This is not a paid promotion for building one South Africa, so I'll move on right along. Definitely didn't get the check coming through, hey? So, I don't know about the abbreviation though, BOSA. It's too closely related to BOSASA, and we all know what happened there, so you might want to go back to your team and have them re-look at that. But anyway, without further ado, allow me to say that we've officially kicked off proceedings. You guys are more than welcome, and I'd now like to hand over control to our Managing Director of Masifunde Learner Development, Mr. Jonas Schumacher.
I don't use a microphone very often here usually, it's not that full. So welcome everyone. I'm super excited to see all of you here today. Very warm welcome to our colleagues from the non-profit sector. Very short notice and the room is full, that's exciting. And that shows us that we have a very special guest today here. Welcome to you, Mmusi Maimane. Thanks for honoring us here today. And I welcome you to our Changemaker Academy. And I think the name was never more suitable than today, because I think our hall is packed with people who are driving change. And that starts from the non-profit sector, that goes on to the SMMEs, the corporate sector. We have a lot of learners here today from school as well that are driving change in their schools. And I think Mmusi is a very good example of how a change maker can look like on meta level, on national level. So we're very excited to have you here and welcome you as one of our change makers. I promised my team that I'm not going to make any jokes about Mmusi at Masi or masifunde and stuff like that. I leave all of those jokes out. Did we do the BOSA joke? I think we did, no? Okay. So jokes, you know, Germans are known for humor, and that's the kind of, you know, that was my always. What we're trying to do today is talk about active citizenship. We want to talk about how we can drive change, and we want to be inspired today. So the whole conversation shall be about that, and we hope that everyone walks out with an idea how he, she could drive change in their personal capacity within their organization to, yes, bring change to our communities. So that's the whole purpose of our conversation today. We have Mmusi speaking to us in a keynote speech, but we also look forward to afterwards discussing together, because I think dialogue is what we need. We need to exchange, we need to hear as many voices as possible, and we want to have our voice also heard and send messages to Mmusi, because he's a change maker on levels where he can initiate change that we might not be able to do. Before we start with the program and hand over to Mmusi, I just wanted to drop this microphone, and then I wanted to just not bore you too much, but just take you through what Masifunde is doing at the moment. I'm sure most of you guys know. Mmusi most probably doesn't know yet. So I thought I'd use that opportunity for two reasons. First of all, I think it's important that we know who does what, because there are linkages, there are synergies, there are possible areas where we can exchange. So we need to know who does what. And secondly, what Masifunde does, we are all about driving change, about activating children and youth to drive change. So that is actually fitting perfectly in the topic of active citizens. So I thought, let me introduce what we do, and our team is here today so that we can see what can we learn from the discussion to improve the work we do when it comes to training change makers. Just really in a nutshell, what we do here in Warma, you see our Changemaker Academy. We run a Montessori preschool. So we start on 2 levels. On the individual level, we start with a Montessori preschool that's learners grade 3 or age 3 to 6. We run in-school programs, so in the afternoon this venue is packed with learners from the 3 schools, doing visual arts, doing drama, doing life skills. And we run an out-of-school youth center. So in total, we offer support programs on individual level for children and youth from the age of 3 to the age of 35. We put the name Family Systems, which you can't see here, because ultimately our support very often reaches out to whole families. You would find a child being in our preschool, the older sibling maybe in our after-school support programs, and you would find the mother maybe being a job seeker in our out-of-school youth center. So our social workers, when they work with the individuals, very often they go and they work on family systems as well. We have a second level that we're working at, and that's the community level, and I realized that I have to change the font color because we can't read it. The bottom part is our community level, so we are training preschools as well. So whatever we learn and whatever we feel we're good at, we try to pass on. So we're training annually preschools in the community, we place libraries in the schools, we try to support the schools with infrastructure, and we train entrepreneurs. Our model in Warma, especially now that's the in-school model, so the primary and high school learners, is a holistic one, and it's very learner-centered. You can see the model partly here. Learners come in the afternoon, they have academic support with us, they do life skills with us, they have extracurricular activities. I mentioned the creative programs, choir, drama. There's also swimming and surfing. So we try to offer all types of academic support and educational support to the learners. There's social assistance if needs be, so we are able to support the learners holistically, and our programs are for free. But in return, we expect that they reach out and they share their knowledge with others. Whether it's our choirs, our drama groups, you see them regularly in the community and they share key messages with others. Our life skill program, called Learn for Life, has on a quarterly basis, they go into the schools, into the community. You see them doing flash mobs, handing out pamphlets, and kind of whatever they learned with us and whatever they think is worthwhile sharing, they share in the community. And by doing that, we have a core group of learners that we support holistically, but we try to contribute to active citizenship community-wide. That's our approach. We modeled that work by, and now reaching out to 45 high schools where we train change makers as well. At each high school, we have 4, 5, 6 change makers that are selected by the learners. We train them, and with the learners then, we go into the schools and we run campaigns. One of the topics is active citizenship, school safety, anti-bullying, conflict resolution, mental health, disabilities coming up, prevention of GBV. So there's important topics, and we tackle them with learners for their peers. So the learners would run campaigns, workshops in their schools, speak at assemblies, and hand out the magazines that you find in front of yourself. By doing that, we have in 45 high schools in the Mandela Bay trained change makers that we try to activate and empower that they can drive change in their community. We've started doing that now in partnership with the National Department of Education in 4 provinces. Next year we're going to be in all 9 provinces. We train 40 NGOs to replicate that program. So by the end of next year, we would be able to have a change maker network in all provinces. We would have access next year in 200 schools, and we would have a nationwide network of young change makers where we try to bring topics of relevance and change into the schools. That is in a nutshell what we're doing. You can see we try to work here in Warma. That's our core community where we go from preschool to post-school. And when it comes to our outreach into the city or by now into the nation, we work systematically through partner organization, and our focus is training change makers. So the topic couldn't be more relevant, what we're discussing today, to inspire us and give us input. That's what I wanted to share. I thank you for giving me the stage. I know you all think who gave the German the microphone. I know that's always the case. And I would hand over that microphone now to the next speaker. I thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to listen to the panel discussion, I think, now. No? Thank you, guys. Thank you. I will over to you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jonas for taking us through the brief explanation of what we do here at Masifunde. I think if we had to just engage on the topics and, give everyone an opportunity to speak about the work that's done, we'd be here all day. But for the purpose of this occasion, just allow us to be brief. We'll now go into the keynote address, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker this morning, none other than a man who hails all the way from Klerksdorp. Very awkward, but anyway. I'll be very brief, and I won't touch on many points, but I think over and above the purpose of his visit now is that he is the founder of Building One South Africa. And above all, everything, he is a husband, a father. He's also an elder at Liberty Church. But more importantly than anything, he is a true active citizen who engages a lot of South Africans and who really is at the heart and center of what it means to be able to just unlock potential and give people the opportunity to feel liberated. And at the end of the day, to celebrate their uniqueness, their individualism, and really, really strives for true active change in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, please, will you please put your hands together for none other than Mr. Mmusi Maimane.
Thank you so much, kind sir.
I want to change the backdrop for you.
Oh, why? I quite like that
It
one.
says thank you now. It's too early. We'll say thank you afterwards.
I just want to say there is a whole string of German comedy series that's coming out. If you want to subscribe to it, you can. It hasn't taken off, but but it will certainly come through. I must say, the first time I ever went to Germany was quite an experience. I was a young South African. I turned about 18 or 19, and so it's kind of like in the late 1998, somewhere there. I think that's when it was. So I arrive in Germany. I go to a place called Cologne, which is far, in my mind, from where I was coming from. And I arrived in the middle of winter, so which made a double barrel. But when I arrived to this place in Cologne, I see these two young white guys working in the garden. I'll never forget thinking to myself, if this is what the white people are doing, what on earth are the black people doing in this place? I thought, this is extraordinary. I'm not joking when I say this. I went up to these guys, I said, can I take a picture with you guys? Because this is a historic moment. I've never seen it in my life. We took pictures together, and I still think to myself, they thought this is weird. I thought that is weird. But it worked out fine in the long run. And I've learned that actually our own prejudices, our own mental frames are exposed when we are confronted with the realities of what South Africa's painful history looks like, and in many ways how we've been programmatized to believe certain things about people. Fellow South Africans, thank you so much for this time this morning. I promise I will not be long, and I'm so privileged to be able to speak to a whole lot of change makers. I think South Africa doesn't have a plan B, it's only got one plan, and ultimately I genuinely believe we don't have a spare South Africa, we've only got this one to work with. Let me up front say congratulations to an incredible initiative and the partnerships that I see here, because they invite me again to say it is within ourselves. We are the ones we've been waiting for. You know, there's no one who's coming to save us. And maybe today I'm not going to speak. I'll speak just as an activist, because at the core of what I do, that's what I stand for. I stand really for the fight to say, when each one of us participate in our country, we could really make a significant nation. I think our country has never been forgotten, never been forsaken, and ultimately we've got an opportunity to build a South Africa that works for everybody. I grew up in Soweto. I grew up to a mother who was a cashier and a father who was a factory worker. We grew up in a town at a time where Group Areas Act meant that many famous people would live in the same communities as you. So that at least was somewhat helpful, because all your role models were just down the road from you, right? But at the same time as that, it meant that life was particularly hard, at least in the 80s. I grew up at a time where the economics of our country were such that townships were just suppliers of labor. And so I'd watch my father leave at 6 in the morning and come back at 6 at night without any of that father-son kind of interaction. I had a mother who worked on weekends. And then when she lost her job, she became an entrepreneur. But I would have never called her that, because it felt like a side hustle. She was just trying to survive. We sold eggs to get me through school. So we had this truck that used to bring eggs to our home. We sell them on the side. And I was always amazed. But when I think about it today, I would have never called my mother an entrepreneur, because it just felt like she was just trying to survive. And sometimes the thing about vision and the thing about seeing things is that sometimes we come into communities and I see t-shirts, I see baristas, I see all of that. We don't call them entrepreneurs. But in many ways, part of the vibrancy of this country, and particularly in communities such as this one, we need to affirm the entrepreneurial culture. Why? Because at the end of the day, we must remind ourselves that bread sold in the township is not any better than bread sold at the Pick and Pay. They aren't differentiating values. There's bread, just like there's coffee, just like there's whatever. The issue that we've got to reaffirm is the dignity that sits within human beings, that says, actually, South Africans are innovative wherever they may be, and our job and our duty is to empower them to be able to achieve that, right? So I'm deeply passionate about some of the work that you are doing here, because I honestly feel there's a powerful, powerful opportunity, and we could really build an unbelievable nation. And also, I want to say, there's an African saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. And for me, I grew up in that village. Sure, when my parents were absent, I had a Catholic nun who took me under her wing, and it's not lost on me that we gather here in Nelson Mandela Bay or in Gqeberha, literally after the 12th of September, when Steve Biko died, certainly under the brutality of the apartheid system. But this Catholic nun wanted to remind us of values of black consciousness. She looked me in the eye and she would say to me all the time, Mmusi, you need to remind yourself that actually you are beautiful. Just because the apartheid system says you are less than does not make you less than. She empowered me with a faith that allowed me to believe that actually I've got to be careful not to be preachy, but I'm clear in my head that had it not been for that Catholic nun who said, in you is the divine, I don't know if Mmusi would be able to stand up confidently and speak to South Africans from whatever background they come from. She empowered me with the belief that I could achieve much. Here she was, a principal of a school who said to me, Mmusi, you must never refer to the grass outside your house as just grass. You must refer to it as the lawn. It was in her little way trying to restore the sense of, you can achieve as comparable as anybody else, right? Don't just, she wasn't trying to say speak the Queen's English, but she wanted to just make sure that we knew our worth coming into any space. So if you put masifunde in a community such as this one, you do what I feel is the starting point of what this country desperately needs. A restoration of values and the value and the dignity in people. Said to students yesterday that Chinua Achebe said it so brilliantly, that a hungry person can never claim freedom. What this country has taken and has lost is the dignity of human beings. We're fast losing that. And that's why it's one of those values inside our constitution that are inalienable. You cannot progressively realize other rights, the right to education, the right to health, all of those things. But the right to dignity is sacrosanct. It's that value of Ubuntu. The idea that in you I see the divine. Or the notion that says, Zuguti, when I find myself in a space where I loot from the people, not only am I committing a crime, but I undermine the dignity of people. I am a husband to one wife. I have 3 kids. And the thing is, if I went outside and sat outside the house as a father and ate KFC, and then wiped my mouth and then walked inside the house and looked at my children and said, no, tonight we have no food, they would look at me and call me an immoral father who has no values. But we forget that our politicians do that all day, all the time. In that they lock themselves in a room and loot from the people and then come back and say, hey guys, we are running out of money. That's not a problem of corruption. That's a problem of a lack of values. The second is the deep need for justice. The idea that if we are going to engage society, we need to exercise justice. As Martin Luther King said, the moral arc of history always bends towards justice. This idea that what apartheid meant as a spatial planning here, that your presence here can redeem what these communities and townships can look like, so that one day prosperity can flow equally across all of society. That is a sense of fighting for justice. The reason I say that is because I can't invite you to say, get involved in the national dialogue or whatever, without knowing what you are getting involved with. And the first starting point must be the ideals of making sure that we bring values of Ubuntu and a sense of deep justice. We have to fight for it with everything inside of us. Because I think if we don't fight for justice, we leave a wound that sits in society open. And we see it manifest in little things. We see it manifest in racism. And people think, we thought we dealt with this racism issue. But there's a wound. Right? We see it manifest in the tensions that we see economically. We see it manifest in policy. When the taxis go on strike in Cape Town and somebody says, oh, it's so nice, we have the roads free to ourselves. I say, do you not realize that actually taxis are a fundamental part of the economy of South Africa and a public good? Right? I hear it at home. I'm married to a white South African. Oh, she's half Welsh, half Lebanese. Which means I live in fear. That's the honest truth. That's the honest truth right there. But, I see her and I walk the streets with her and my kids, and I know that for others, they come to me, they said, Mmusi, you've done so well. Because you are now married, you've married up. I say, is it up because she's white? Can't say that, right? And then I meet some people who say, this one sold us out. All of those issues emanate from a wound. It's the pain of inferiority and superiority. And unless we're willing to attend to the question of justice, we'll never be adequately able to deal with that wound. It's not just nice, clever cliches that say maybe our kids will be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skins. But it's attending to that wound so that that can be true. Because if we don't attend to the wound of inferiority and superiority as born out of racial domination, we'll end up with a recycling of nationalism from one to another. And then the words of President Mandela then become very true when he stands up and he says at the Rivonia trial, I have opposed black dominance and I've opposed white dominance. People misquote that so as to fail to recognize that even back then he understood the dangers of a recycling of racial nationalism over another. So yes, I do send my deep condolences to people like Mangosuthu Buthelezi in his passing. But part of me also feels like Zulu nationalism must also be buried with him. Because we can't keep revolving cycles. So, if we restore values based on Ubuntu and justice, what vision do we then hold? And I want to land this here. And maybe practically, let's talk about what we can do. Because the temptation is for people to go, you're just here to politic. I'm a recovering politician. Let's put it that way. But there are a couple of things if we're going to stimulate the township economy that we must do. That's why I celebrate programs such as this one. I was speaking to the leadership here and I said to them, you know, one of the things that we've got to be clear about is what do we do for a child in the first 1,000 days of their lives? You know, often when I speak to moralistic Christians, or at least when you deal with morality as a paternalistic thing, often they get caught up in a debate about the termination of pregnancy and choice. And I go, I understand that debate, I'm schooled enough. But before we even get to who terminates or who does what, can we at least do one thing? Can we introduce a maternal grant so that the mother who is pregnant can eat so that they can feed their child? Because if that child is born stunted because they didn't eat inside the womb, their economic probability is halved. So, I value the work that you do in making sure that even in that first 1,000 days, because often what happens is that a mother leaves the hospital and it takes them 3 months to apply for a child grant to a point where they can't feed the child for 90 days. It's an injustice. So we have to, from a policy point of view, begin to think about the rights of children, that ECD centers become something that we legislate for, fund, and ensure they are functional. That's why the program of Masifunde can only be underpinned by healthy children who are going to excellent ECD centers. Why? Because in truth, our kids cannot read for meaning. 8 out of 10 of our children cannot read for meaning. So yes, fees must fall at higher level, but that only speaks to 12% of our society. For every 100 kids who are born, if they're not going to ECD centers, half of them will drop out of school and only a fraction of them will get bachelor's pass rates that they can end up at university. So if we're going to fix the skills pipeline, let's start with the first 1,000 days. I want to say the second thing we've got to do is we've got to adjudicate on title deeds, especially in townships. And I'm glad this is on a properly titled land. It's the best way to begin economic prosperity for anybody, is that they have an asset with which they can trade against. If my mother did not have a title to her house, she could never have gone to the bank to say, can you lend me some money so I can take this one to university? And so today I did my first degree through UNISA. We had no bucks, so I did UNISA, and I'm sad to see what's going on at UNISA at this point in time. But I'm grateful that that gave me a foundation. Today I'm busy trying to finish a PhD along with the work that I do. But it's out of the fact that there was title. that began. You cannot run a business in a township unless you have title to that land. How come is it that when you go to townships, there are no Remexes, what's the other house selling things, Rossins or whatever? Why is that not the case? Because assets in townships are not tradable. Because people don't own the title. If you want to talk about township economies, well, we have to talk about township titles. Otherwise, can I say the elephant in the room? Here's the elephant in the room. Now I'm going to be kicked out, I'm sure of it. What's going to happen is that you end up with immigrants who come into townships, buy that land, and then everybody blames the immigrants. And we start to stoke up the xenophobic fires. Whilst we ignore the fact that we didn't adjudicate title for people first, so I can trade. My fight with the big retailers, I tell them all the time, I say, fine, I don't mind you starting a USave or a Pick and Pay, whatever, in the township. But here's what I will fight for, is that at whatever price Checkers buys bread at, and that bread lands in the township, that must be the same for spaza shops. Because then you don't have to buy bread at USave for 10 rands and 12 rand at a spaza shop. It means that spaza shop is uncompetitive. Let's just land it at the same price. And then if the spaza shop wants to sell it for 15 and it bought it for 10, fair deal. But don't make anti-competitive behavior because of massive wholesale pricing that comes out of big corporates. I'm not anti a USave, I'm just saying there are some economic practices and realities that we need to put. The second is we need to make townships special economic zones. If you can have a center like this, why can't next door you have a business processing center so that we can run a call center from here? Surely the internet that arrives in Woma or in this community is not much worse than the internet that arrives in Summerstrand. So if the same internet is there, let's give people an opportunity to be able to trade. Why is that? When you talk about justice and values, it means mothers can work closer to home where their children are. People are spending 40% of their income on transport to and from work. If we want to deal with justice, let's create economic conditions where people live. My kids, they benefit from me being Justin J, working close to them. I never expected for my father to ever come to any sports event or anything. It was like, it's like I'm not even wounded by it. Other people are like, I haven't expected. No, I'm not triggered. I'm not with those people. But my kids think it's normal that I'm at their sports game. They in fact become surprised. They go, oh, we were playing today and you were not there. I say, you don't realize the benefit of economic participation close to where I home. Sometimes I sit on the side of the netball field with a Zoom call on the side there. But they benefit. Why can't we do the same for townships? Why can't we give free Wi-Fi in townships? Why can't we make it such that economic participation in communities such as this one can happen? Why don't we support entrepreneurs more? The entrepreneur here and the entrepreneur elsewhere is no different. But to achieve that, we've got to build capital. And this is a fight. I've said to people as reparations, let's build a jobs and justice fund so we can help fund. I know many people, whenever I speak to churches, I say to them, your building is being used only on a Sunday. Surely from Monday to Saturday, it can be an internet hub or a place for people to network and create work opportunities. Why not? Why can't we create these hubs where people can actually trade? But it will need capital. It's going to need money. So I'm hoping that we can create a jobs and justice fund so that actually we can fund economic activity in communities. You should not be limited from your business because you don't have money. And then we must keep our communities safer. No NGO, is going to thrive in communities that are not safe. I was speaking to my daughter, I say to her, when I was a child, my father would say to me, yes, 5 rand, go buy bread. And then you'd walk all the way down. Now I say to them, there's a shop down the road from our house. If I gave you money to say, go buy bread there, would you be able to walk? She says, never. I said, what's your problem? She says, no. I could be attacked by people here. I said, that's not the South Africa I want to live in. The truth is, if mothers, and I want to speak to women, because as a man, I've never walked into an Uber and thought to myself, Ish, I must send a live location every time I'm traveling. Yet women have to do that all the time. That's not the country we must live in. So let me close by challenging you, given all of the politics, given all of the policy, what then should you do? If you remember anything, I want to encourage you to participate. Participate. Now you say, where? The first is, you have to vote. Now you might say, no, now he's come. No. You have to vote though. Because if we don't vote, the truth of the matter is, in the ages of 18 to 20, I heard a stat that says less than 80% of the kids, 80% of the kids are not even registered to vote. And I apologize for calling them kids. They are young people. But it's a concern. Because if that group of citizens are not voting, we open ourselves to a democracy where people can effectively, you're going to get an olding population deciding the future of a younger population. And then you end up with countries in Africa where the president can hardly see or walk, but they lead a country where the median age is 23. It breaks my heart that when I look in this room and all of the talented people here, all of you are too young to be in parliament. It's sad. Think about it there. It's all of you. All of you. Wait until you are 70, then you can go. It can't be. Surely that's illogical, right? But it begins with the basic civil duty of let's go vote. Let's register to vote. The second is use your voice. You can't just be a Twitter activist. Use your voice. The municipality will table an IDP. Use your voice. The police station will deal with issues of community policing forum. Use your voice. Go participate. We don't. And so decisions are being made parallel, and we tend to think, well, if we just sit back, things are not. We have the voice and we have the power. Use the voice. Go out and speak. I didn't join politics because I wanted to end up in parliament. I actually wanted to join politics because I was working in a business and they were delivering chocolates. I thought, if these guys can deliver chocolates, how can I help the government deliver textbooks? So I put my hand, I went and I wanted to get involved. And I kicked down whatever door. And here's the thing, you'll be surprised. You'll be kicking against an open door, and who you meet on the other side, you'll be amazed and say, Haibo, how did we allow you to be here? That's the honest truth. I'm not trying to demean people, but I was saying to Luphumlo on my way here, we must transcend this thing where people in public service are there because of political connections. We must transcend this thing where we have politicians who don't have degrees. Honestly, what are we saying to our kids? We're saying to our children, no, when I just be connected, you'll get there. Let's get people who are skilled, competent, who can serve in public life. And then we'll restore the dignity so that we stop thinking politicians are just, these ones who drive around in fancy cars. We need that sense. Use your voice. The third thing is I'm going to ask you to volunteer. you described me as an activist. I earn nothing from the work that I do. I have to do other things to earn money. But I said service to the country will always be free for me. And that comes at a cost to our family. Comes at a massive cost. But that's all volunteer. Because we can participate. We can build entrepreneurship. We can develop an economy that works. And if all of us do it, we can see our communities change. I'm going to use a different township. In Joburg, we have a township called Soshanguve. Soshanguve is just a little bit from Pretoria, the city center of Tshwane. The GDP in Soshanguve is annually over 2 billion rand. But it is unearthed because it sits in a way that it expatriates that capital. It goes and buys goods elsewhere and ignores the economic opportunities that sit within it. And the net consequence of it is that despite the wealth that sits in Soshanguve, Soshanguve still remains poor. Could it be so that despite the wealth that sits in this community still remains poor? I joined politics because I had this faith. I got to be careful, but I'll say it anyways. Someone said to me, what's your favorite verse in the Bible? It was John 3:16. Oh, that's a nice and easy one. What does it mean? Oh, for God so loved the world and all of that. And I've always thought to myself, did God love Dobsonville so much that he placed me there? I guess the question is, and I'm not trying to Christianize the issue, please don't. But if genuinely we care about this community, surely you've been placed here for a particular purpose. And if that is true, could we not serve in such a way that one day, 10, 15 years from now, we can have the dignity of people restored? We could heal the wound of injustice and have a vision for citizens who are prosperous. It's all in your hands. And if I can partner and work with you to achieve that dream, it will be a great honor. And I'm here committed because I want to see more activists and more people who can change society. It's not going to happen from Parliament. It's going to happen from this room. And if we are alive to it, my gosh, society can change. Thank you very much. And God bless. Let me hand over.
Thank you. Another, excuse me, can we please give another round of applause for Mr. Maimane? Such profound and beautiful words. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So I think what we'll do is, there are a couple of questions that we prepped for the panelists. So we're going to ask them a couple of questions, and I'd really like to spend a bit of time on engaging some of your questions, particularly based on what Mmusi was saying earlier on. And let me say this, I think I love people who disagree. I love it. I love it when people say, but maybe there, So I would encourage all of those, particularly those questions that might have a different voicing opinion to what had been said. My name is Luphumlo Joka. And I think what we can kick off with is maybe a basic introduction of maybe who you are and maybe what you do. And then we'll kick off to one of the first questions that I have. We'll start with Giovanni on my far right there.
Hi there, Giovanni Poggi. I'm a lecturer in the History and Political Studies department at Nelson Mandela University.
Sorry, can you hear at the back? They can't hear. Can you speak louder, please?
I'm usually pretty good at projecting without a microphone, so I kind of have to lower and reduce myself. Sorry, it's Giovanni Poggi from Nelson Mandela University. I'm in the History and Political Studies department.
Yes, that's it, Max.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amandla Didiza. I am the Entrepreneurship Development Coordinator here at Masifunde. Funny story, Giovanni actually lectured me a while ago when I did politics.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tarryn Ramoo-Sakube, a social worker and a program manager at Masifunde.
Awesome. Yeah, no.
I bring my own. Huh?
No, we know who you are. It's fine.
All right.
I want to start with really unpacking this whole idea of active citizenship a bit further and a bit deeper. And I want to pose that question to all of you. Giovanni, you're a lecturer, so maybe from your side, what are your thoughts on how we could get involved and how we can unpack this whole concept of active citizenship? How do we take part? What can we do? I mean, there are a whole lot of different people in the room. There are young people, particularly young people. Please prepare a question. The guys that are wearing school uniform would love to take a couple of questions from you. So how do we unpack this whole concept? I'd love to hear a word from all of you around how we can do that, particularly within your own context. Amandla works with entrepreneurs, Tarryn, non-profit sector, Mmusi as an activist and as a politician. So how do we take it a step further?
Okay, well, I think first off, something like this is a really good start, and bringing people together from various sectors to talk to one another, see where our congruencies lie, how we can change, develop things together. If I think about, like, from a university perspective, so what we've been doing with Masifunde this year is like a community engagement project, which is spearheaded by myself and a few of my postgraduate students that are here with us in the room today. That actually, interestingly, a lot of them are doing research on South African democracy at the moment, the values of electoralism, youth participation in elections and that kind of thing. So, I mean, if I take it from the university's point of view, we already present ourselves as like sort of change makers in teaching and research, and then obviously trying to step outside of that a little bit with community engagement activities. One of the nice things about, say, Nelson Mandela University, for instance, is whilst not being a leading research institution in the country, we're more of a teaching university, but we were recently recognized as one of the main universities in the country for doing research on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, values and goals and that kind of thing. So I think that's a nice feather in the cap for our university. It means that, like, we're in the right place with the work that we do, with the research that we do, that it's like social justice orientated and sustainable development orientated as well, and that sort of like bleeds into that. But certainly, like, from my personal perspective, and I've worked with the guys at Masifunde for approximately 10 years now, doing Learn for Life, which is now like headed up by Fu. Where's Fu? Fundile and Sive are doing an amazing job with Learn for Life. I've been coordinating and working with them this year, and have been a co-facilitator in Learn for Life, and I'd like to get more of my colleagues involved in that as well. So bringing more of the university community towards things like Masifunde is cool for me.
Is there anything that can be changed in terms of how education is rolled out so that more students are exposed to some of these opportunities, and so that from a university policy perspective, university students who are doing research are mandated to take part in? I'm not sure if that question makes sense. Yeah. Do you think, before we go to Max, do you think that there's anything that can be changed in terms of universities and how the structure is, so that we've got more people coming out and doing rather than sitting, and learning? And
certainly at two levels. If we're thinking like primarily about universities, then there's actually some colleagues over here today from the education faculty that we want to link up with Masifunde, so bringing the university again into closer proximity. One of the other things that I also wanted to mention, though, that outside of, like, say, the university space, is boosting civic education in schools, which is, like I said, work that a few of my honors students are looking at researching on at the moment, because I think that is, in the formal education sector, it's not covered enough. That can be that sort of exposure that kids get can be filtered in through like life orientation and guidance and that kind of thing at schools. So I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more school kids learning about all the different facets of democracy so that they're not just stuck on the electoralism aspect of it and the elections aspect of it, but towards the tail end of what Mmusi was saying in his address about all the different ways that they can get involved in government. The fact that you can be a town hall person, anybody can be a town hall person, is important, to go and challenge your politicians, you know, hold them accountable.
Yeah. Amandla?
Okay, sure. I think from my side, Luphumlo, you know, historically I've always thought it's about creating the right kind of policies, whether it's from white paper to green paper, you know, having active citizens engaged in community dialogues. But I realize that all it takes is our ability to create the ideal that someone can contribute to something. I think for me that makes sense when we're trying to empower people, you know. It's moving people from participants to actors, you know, where they're actively engaged in community affairs and where they understand that they've got some significant contribution to give within their immediate community or within broader society. But then the question always begs, you know, what role do I play? How do I do this? You know, from a business perspective, you know, a lot of people will be like, but I've got nothing to offer because at the end of the day, I'm a very informal business. You know, I've got a startup and a hustle. And a lot of people usually miss the conversation because at the end of the day, there's a very good book written by Pagamela Nzamela, it's Native Merchants. And in there he says, you know, merchants, he uses the word merchants intentionally because he says, it's all about the ability for you to have a good that you can sell and the value that you can bring to society. And I think that's where the answer is. You know, from an entrepreneurship perspective, what do you have and what can you trade with that can give commercial value to people and that at the end of the day can engage you in economic participation? And that's what people need to be ingrained with. I think the example that Mmusi gave of his mother being an entrepreneur, but him not being able to recognize his mother as an entrepreneur is what has plagued our communities for many generations. You know, there's so many entrepreneurs that aren't plugged in to entrepreneurship ecosystems that just empower them to feel like they can be participants and they can have value to exchange. And I think that's what we're trying to drive in creating things like an incubator, where people can be in an economic ecosystem where they can see other entrepreneurs trading in goods, exchanging values, and they can be empowered. So it takes something as simple as that. You know, while policy is important, while we need to create funding streams and we need to create fundable businesses where there are 9-point plans that are streamlined for history, at the very heart of it is us being able to create the pattern where people can understand that I can play a significant role, no matter how little or how great that is. But at the end of the day, I do have something that can be exchanged in value in communities.
Max is quite a good speaker. I want to come back to that a bit later on because what I also want us to unpack a bit is this whole policy thing in the SMME sector and what policies and what laws need to be changed so that the environment is more enabling for entrepreneurs. So I want to come back to that. Tarryn, non-profit sector, there are a lot of people here that are in the non-profit sector. We've got the CEO of YMCA. Sisi, can you just wave so that we can see you if you don't know? We've got so many people. Upoti there, if you can just wave too, Poti. Yes. I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. We've got so many people from the non-profit sector that are here. How do we, and let's make it a bit more practical and granular, how do we drive change? Masifunde is a brilliant it's a brilliant model for me. I've done a bit of work with Masifunde. How do we drive that change? How do we do it? And how can we replicate what is happening here in other communities?
Okay, thanks, Luphumlo. Is the microphone?
You can use this one.
Okay, so thanks very much for that. I think in the past few years, NPO sector has been sidelined. It's just those people working in the communities, working with the poor people, working with, you know, the disadvantaged communities. And in recent times, especially during COVID, I think more and more people understood the importance of the NGO sector. A lot of the NGO partners here, I mean, we as NGOs have worked together for many years. for many times, and we have realized that we need each other to do the work. So it's not we have come together and work together to get more work done. And through programs like Masifunde or NGOs like Masifunde, we have came a long way. And it's not just through us, but it's through everyone else that we've partnered with and worked with. And I think this is off completely, eh? But I'm sure you can hear me pretty well. So, but I think as NGOs per se is that we work on the ground with the community. We work on the ground with people. And for us is empowering those that don't have those voices. Amandla spoke about voices. People do have voices. Our community members have got voices. Our learners, you would see them, they have voices. They are empowered. They are able to share and have an opinion, but they're not given opportunities to share their opinion. And if they are in spaces, they're often frowned upon. So if we create spaces where we do welcome the learners, we do welcome community structures within the spaces and allow them an opportunity to talk and be a part of decision making, I think that is so important. Our NPO sector, we've got Doxa here, we've got No Means No, we have Mastinusani, we've got Debbie over here, who I said a few years ago, said that she wants to start a WhatsApp group with a whole lot of NGOs, and a simple tool of starting a WhatsApp group. I don't know how many people we have now in the WhatsApp group, but many of us are on that WhatsApp group, and if there are opportunities out there, we share it amongst each other. And it's creating, we understand that it's not us as individuals, but we are doing it for many more people. We are doing it for the community who we represent. And I think that is, as we get into higher powers, that we don't forget why we're doing it. And all NGOs, we started here for a reason. There's something that we started working. So just to bring everyone up with us as we go.
Mmusi, you look like you're very deep in thought and you're thinking about something very important. So your comments on what everyone has said, particularly from a policy perspective, let's take it a step further. How do we drive more change? Amandla spoke a bit about the SMME sector, Tarryn a bit about the NPO sector. From a policy perspective, you've been in Parliament. For how long were you in Parliament? 5 to 6 years. You know, so you know Parliament very, very well. You know parliamentarians very well. How do we, at that level now, maybe let me ask you it like this. What are some of the laws that are working against SMMEs? And maybe what are some of the laws that you know of that are working against the non-profit sector? And how do we drive that change so that those laws are changed, so that things are a bit easier for the SMME and the non-profit sector? Whilst Mmusi is speaking, I'm going to take a couple of questions. So please think, I'm going to start with you here because you look very smart. And I know that you've got a very smart question. So just think of what question you have for the panelists whilst Mmusi is speaking.
I mean, the first is, rather than what laws, it's who. Okay. I always think people follow people, and if you get the right policy makers, you can achieve the policies you want. So the first piece of legislation is the Electoral Amendment Bill, which will sound strange, but the reality is, if a hospital burns here, who is representing this community in Parliament fighting for the repair of that hospital? If you just leave it to the politics and party politics, if I can be a little bit spicy, let me say this like this. I see the posters here, there's a manifesto review thing here taking place. The truth is, it's going to be a rally and it's going to be in generalities. But if we honestly want, we need to be able to point to somebody and say, Mmusi, you were elected in Woma to represent us in Parliament. What do you do about the competencies that sit at national government, such as education, such as security and healthcare? What have you done about those things? So if I was mobilizing in this community, I'd say, find a candidate who will represent the issues of this community that we can endorse and put them in parliament. Don't worry about the political party, worry about the who. And then on the second issue, which is the SMME issue, is I think then everything flows on from there. Because I actually don't think the laws are that cumbersome. The difficulty that we've got at the moment is always the implementation issue that comes with it. And no one is held accountable for that. When it comes to, every member of parliament, let me tell you a secret. Every member of parliament is given a constituency and is given funding to deal with that constituency. But what invariably happens is that the political parties take that funding and use it for their own political programs instead of developing communities. So if we're going to hold people accountable, let's bring them back here. That's why, in many ways, we started BOSA because we said, if you want to be in parliament, we'll help you get there. We don't have a party list. We just want people. And then, to your point, I think it starts with each one. We got to find those individuals. One of the most impactful NGOs in my life was an NGO called GCP. It was a gifted child program. How I qualified is a miracle. But what they did is they said, let's give the kids maths and science lessons on Saturdays. During apartheid, they had white people come into townships and black people come and teach, all of that sort of stuff. We spent Saturdays doing maths and science, only 2 subjects. And that revolutionized the education of those kids. If you are a university student here, I'll challenge your department and say, every student, at least as part of their curriculum design, must come and spend time in townships teaching, especially STEAM subjects, on a volunteer basis for an hour. We will radically impact an individual because at this point in time, we've got communities that are left unsupervised, whether the parents are there or not there, whether there's a legacy of apartheid in that, migrant labor systems are still in place. But for those who have been given something, an opportunity to go to university, you've got to come in and volunteer. And if the spaces are available, you just sit with a learner and do maths or do science or do English. That impacts that one child. So the politics of the issue is about who. The laws we can change. I was there for 6 years. It's not a problem. You can change those things. And I'm afraid to say this, and this is painful to say. Many politicians don't actually even understand the law-making process and are unclear because they don't live in communities to know what communities need. So get people from communities to go write laws that serve communities. We're better off in that way.
Giovanni, your thoughts on that?
Which part exactly? Well, I'll touch on the point that Mmusi directed to me. So, that's why I'm trying to bring my students out here as much as possible. We can do more, and we should be doing more, and we certainly want to look into that. I think what's interesting about the way that we move these projects and the direction that we move these projects in, and I'm gonna take a little bit of a tangent here, because I might not get a chance to say it later, the setting is ripe for a statement of this nature. In South Africa, we do kind of struggle with a bit of leadership intoxication. And I think if we're going to move this country in the right direction, it's nice to have people that are on platforms that can work for us. So it's nice to have someone like Mmusi here today, someone that can maybe go to high-profile places and speak for us. But what we've often done in this country is we like to, and the media doesn't help either, it builds and it creates these sort of like political messiahs, and then we look up towards them for our direction. Like they will save us, they will take us to the promised land and that kind of thing. And we need to sort of like change our mindset about that as well. So there's a certain change in mindset. Yes, let those people do their job, and hopefully they do it correctly. We as civil society, through civil society organizations, through the various operators over here, we can have oversight, we can try to hold them accountable, but at the same time, not just look to them to do everything for us, right? So I think, I'm sorry if I didn't answer the question, but I thought it was important to get that point across. That we stop saying like, okay, Jay-Z's going to come and save us now, or that Cyril Ramaphosa is now going to come and save us, these political messiahs, that we do the work ourselves on the ground. Right?
Take 2 or 3 questions from the audience. I'll start with you. Number 1, I'll take number 1 from this table right at the back there. I'll take number 3. So, number 1, number 2, number 3 at the table.
So I'm a grade 10 learner, and I was given the opportunity to come and...
Do you mind just standing so we can all see you?
Okay, well, my name is Gayatri Gavanda. I go to Victoria Park High School, and I was given the opportunity today to come and, witness all of this. And I'm just inspired by the way, the topics that you're talking about, introducing a maternal grant and a jobs and justice fund. But I mainly was thinking about the incorporation of the youth. So as a change maker, that is what I'm here to do, incorporate the youth. And I feel like one thing we can definitely do is start from a young age to educate people on the wrongdoings of the country and voting and the reasoning for voting and that kind of thing. Because if you think about it, we are the next generation. We are the future of the country. And with us being educated on the things of what we should do and what we shouldn't do, I think it'll allow us to, change South Africa. It'll allow us to better the future for ourselves and our children, because if we just, leave the decisions to people before us who experienced hardship and all of that stuff, we're going to take that into our future. So I feel like, when it comes to being an active citizen, we need to teach them young. We need to educate students at a young age. And I feel one way is social media, because that's how our youth gets their information. They use social media. So start, workshops online, have groups, have that kind of thing, and have these talks, because it'll benefit us. And if we are benefited in the correct way, we will then allow change to happen for our future and lead a better life for us.
Awesome. Mmusi, I'm going to point that comment to you. Youth participation. I know you spoke about it last night. Maybe very short, your name and your question.
Good day, everyone. My name is Viweteko, and I am Induna of Solve Processing. So I just have 2 questions here, in which this is just a general question to the panelists on how can we be able to build the future while we are faced with the present circumstances without blaming the past. So, and my second question is directed to Mmusi Maimane on, as much as you want to build South Africa and the dreams that you want to achieve, how can I be able to help you? You want to help everyone else, but how can I help you? That's my question. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Our last question.
Good day to you all. My name is Inati Mbajazwa. My question is, how can I effectively communicate my opinions and concerns to the policy makers?
Communicate to policymakers. Yes. Perfect. I'll take the first number of questions. The biggest opportunity society has given us nowadays is technology, right? Like, in some ways, we could all sit in this room. In another ways, we could all sit on a Zoom webinar, or whatever the thing is. There are massive opportunities, and I'm taking on to that question you raise. I think technology has allowed us the space to break down barriers to entry to public figures of any kind, and let's use it. Let's use it to its full effects. Because if we're able to create, I'm just imagining this, right? I like the idea of a WhatsApp group, because, You can create a space where people can engage. But if you use things like Zoom and webinars and all of that technology, you can immediately, at a click of a button, be face-to-face with someone. I was on a Zoom call last week with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Like, that would have never happened. I would have had to travel to Pakistan, do all sorts of things. But there's a couple of us, we sit in a room, he briefs, he talks about what's going on in Pakistan, we respond to that, and I can send him a direct question. It doesn't need to go through a newspaper, anything. I can say, hey pal, this is what I think. And he responds. So technology is a massive opportunity. But whenever people say to me, the system for participation is broken, let me say this to you. It's not broken, it's working for somebody. Politicians actually want for people not to participate. It's the truth. Because the more you participate, you ask difficult questions. So let's make it uncomfortable. Literally, it must be uncomfortable. Honestly, whether it's the use of technology, whether it's us making public submissions, when I leave here, and I'm afraid when I leave, we're going to run out of here, it's not because I'm trying to be rude. I'm going to walk inside the mayor's office and insist that these issues of corruption must be attended to. It's possible. You don't need to be a special human being. You just have to be somebody who says to me, there's no door that I will not want to kick down. And get in there. Don't. Power is never given by those who are powerful. It must be taken. You must go out and pursue it. And so, to your point, as a young person, I want to reverse it back to you. Because you're young, right? You need to tell me. Because I'll tell you why political parties don't speak to young people. It's a vicious cycle. Young people aren't registered to vote, so political parties don't talk to them, and so they don't talk to them, and young people don't register to vote. You can follow the cycle, right? That's a problem. If you registered, here you'll put fewer in those people. Suddenly they'll think hard about talking to you. And make the issues the issues. In South Africa, Noam Chomsky says it so beautifully. He says what governments want people to do is to have narrow debates. But when they debate those issues, they must do so rigorously. So you and I will wake up in the morning and watch Senzo Meyiwa's trial and be angry and debate it and wonder who did what, or Thabo Bester. Please, people. 70 people were murdered yesterday, 70 more today, and 70 more tomorrow. But we're not talking about that. We have these moments where the Minister of Education stands up and says, oh, this year we achieved an 80% pass rate. But the truth is, it's 80% of what? That number means nothing if kids are passing at 30%. So let's have broader discussions and force public, this weekend thing, you must go to that thing and ask the president, Mr. President, are you proud of your government? Let's start there. Do we have a government we are proud of? So that's my invitation. I can only say it like that. And use every opportunity. Our democracy is written for public participation. Use it. Use it at IDPs. Use it at all of those things. Go and make the voice heard. Because no one can stop you in that space. And then you are asking me, sir, and I love your question, how can you help? I did say, I invite you to volunteer. Volunteer is part of the movement. Go out and participate. If each one of us speak to 4 or 5 people, we'll create a movement that will gradually over time bring change. You know, one of my greatest conversations I had was with an old ANC person who was actually Oliver Tambo's assistant. So that's how old they are. They said the only thing they had to do is recruit 5 people as an individual and mobilize those people to be conscious about how they can bring change and do things. And each one of those inspire people to do that. All things are multi-level marketing and using modern language. But the truth is, if each one of us participate, we volunteer, we use our voices, and you can ask Luphumlo. I've never led from a school of thought that makes me the destination or the most in charge. Let's empower everybody to lead wherever they are. I frankly am not one who cares about titles. I know every leader says that they make themselves sound humble, but that's to be honest with you, let's do what works and work with people who want to work and get the job done, because the job at the end of the day matters. So my invitation would be for you to volunteer. You can make contact with me, make contact with the team here, but also let's make sure that we can mobilize society, because the biggest win will be when people stay at home and do nothing and hope for things to change. It's not going to happen, and the day they are awakened to wanting change, they're not going to use the ballot. They'll use other forms, and I promise you there'll be no security to protect us or protect anybody. So I'd invite you, sir, and make contact. You can email me, mmusi.maimane@bosa.org.za. Drop me an email. I'll engage you fully, because I really want us to be activists together in whatever way. This is not about election 2024. It's about the actual existential future of this country. And if we don't see it that way, the long-term investment in this country, we're going to all suffer. So let's all participate. Right?
30 seconds or less, your final comments on everything that has been said. Tarryn, can you start with your
Okay, so my closing would be to everyone is that we need to work together to be that change. We are civil society, we are the community, and advocate for everyone around us, advocate for those that don't have voices, and continue advocating for our communities and our people.
Okay, I think for me it's drawing back to active citizenship, and that's pretty much why we're here. It's a simple thing of new outcomes require us to break up with old patterns. And the old patterns are that, we're really used to seeing active citizenship at, higher structures, or there's always upper echelon that determines what we should be doing as people. But again, I think you spoke of something very important, participation, young people. It's all about being able to create the spaces where we're able to equip and empower young people. It's something as simple as a space of this nature, like Gio said. This is where the conversation starts. If you want to be more empowered about voting rights and the like, we're going towards national elections. We'll go towards, in 2026, local elections. Those of you who have various mandates in various organizations, create the space where there is that level of education. There's an IDP, there's an NDP that people don't know about. Let's understand what the thinking is from a local and a national level, and then from there, what role you have to play. And that's how we equip each other. If people don't know voting rights, that's basic constitutional law 101. Let's get in and understand what it is all about. But in our various sectors, in our various spaces, we should be able to understand that we should develop new patterns of thinking in order for us to make a greater impact. Because at the end of the day, for us to just rely on certain, whether you're looking at government or you're looking at private sector, for us to just rely on these particular entities and individuals to deliver messages, programs, and at the end of the day to effectively roll out change will be an impossible mission. It'll really be an impossible mission, and it means at the end of the day, we won't be actors in that, we'll just be recipients and participants of the entire process. So we need to be able to understand the mandate and the task that lies ahead, whether you're from Philandota, whether you're from Unity through Sport, Ubuntu, Masifunde, or whatever the case may be. It's dialogues of this nature that knit us all together and create one uniform response to how we want our communities to be. Had it not been for me being engaged in a township like Woma, the bigger picture would have still eluded me. I may come from a township, but the bigger picture of Woma Township would definitely elude me because I'm not engaged with the everyday activities and the needs of Woma Township. And so that's what we need in order for us to be able to be active citizens. Sure.
I'd like to use the last bit of my time to just riff a little bit more on the question that you asked there. Is it Gaia? Great question. So, and then close out with what I think is most important takeaway from this conversation. So, we were addressing the situation of obstacles to youth political activism, and I've picked out two that I think are quite important, and one of them is lack of exposure to initiatives, and I'll speak on that a little bit more towards the end. And the second one is what I see as a big obstacle to youth political activism is co-optation into big politics. We've oftentimes seen this in South African movements, also most notably with Fees Must Fall in recent times, that what happens is these big political machines, I won't name them, but one's blue, one's yellow, and there's a red one too. They like to pull youth into their system and keep all political activism in-house. And what happens is people that want to change their circumstances, want to change things for their communities or whatever, they get incorporated into this political machinery, and they lose the will to be radical, to move the level forward. So I'd like to see a little bit more independence from the youth on that level. And sure, yes, social media is very important, but it has advantages and it has disadvantages. I think with the way we've seen social media go with America in recent times, we have to be careful not to fall into the same sort of trap of this sort of like heavy polarization that's occurred through the management of algorithms and that kind of thing, that now we have social media as a landscape for like radical right-wing people to go crazy against radical left-wing people, and nobody's meeting each other in the middle anymore, and when we can't really solve the problems in our societies anymore. So I think we have to be careful because of that, because we do have social media for things like mass mobilization. It was like at the forefront of North Africa's movement towards democracy. Some of them, unfortunately, have fallen back in recent times, but Tunisia is still going strong since then. So it was a critical factor in things like the Arab Spring, and it obviously was a critical factor in Fees Must Fall as well. So it certainly has its place. But also, we need to move a little bit outside of it as well. Realize that sometimes your political activism online, that there's like a lack of transfer to the real world. So make sure that you're getting out there in the real world as well, and they're not essentially just only being a keyboard warrior, you know. And yeah, and I think that's something that the youth needs to tackle. So the last thing that I want to finish on is that I was talking about lack of exposure to initiatives, and this is where I really want to drive the point home about increased civic education and political education for the youth in schools, even from late junior school level onwards, right up into high school and university level. Because one of the important things about democracy is it's predicated upon this thing called political and civil liberties as well. And I think our youth are done a major disservice by not being taught just how complex democracy can be, right? That it begins and it ends with elections. And I think if your mind is expanded, as we do with university students when we teach them Politics 101, I mean, if you look at countries around the world where democracy is incredibly successful, school kids know about things like political ideology from a young age already, from 12, 13, 14 years old. Whereas it seems to be held for the privileged youth in South Africa that get to university to learn about politics in greater depth. So to increase education systems, like I say, you could use it in life orientation classes and guidance classes, that kind of thing. Civic education is a must for young people.
I think UK is doing something amazing. Introducing very